It is a scam when you don't allow everyone to operate on fair terms.
We are the Robin Hoods of sports betting. We take something back from the rich bookies and enable our customers to beat them instead.
G'day everyone, welcome back to our FIFA World Cup 2022 daily live streams on the Trademate Sports Betting podcast. Today we'll be previewing tomorrow's group games, which are Cameroon versus Serbia, South Korea versus Ghana, Brazil versus Switzerland, and Portugal versus Uruguay. As always, please send through any questions, comments, bets you have throughout the stream, through the live chat, and we will discuss them on the podcast. As you can see, it's just me and Paul from Feinting The Line today. How are you, mate?
How's it going, bud? I'm glad to be here again.
Yep, glad to have you back, mate. How was the weekend? Enjoy even more football?
Yeah, a little bit of football, a little bit of American football, Thanksgiving. It was a nice little...
Sorry, I should say.
Yeah, no, it was a good little break, and so ready to get back at it.
Yeah, nice, mate. Any thoughts on today's games? I have been asleep for most of them, so I'm just trying to think. I guess the big one was Costa Rica beating Japan in the 80-something minute. Morocco getting a nice result there. I don't think that's a huge shock to anyone. Belgium have been pretty poor lately. And then what was it, 1-1 in the last game, Germany-Spain. Any thoughts on today's games?
Yeah, they were interesting. I didn't have too much action in today's game, so I kind of watched mildly more, I'd say. I watched the last three more than I watched the first one. That Costa Rica game, I didn't watch too much. That's 5 a.m. my time. I woke up at like halftime, watched a little bit of it, got some work done, and then saw them score that goal late. So that was kind of interesting. I didn't have any action there. The Morocco game, I mean, nice upset there by the odds, at least. But yeah, they were probably too big of odds. I mean, everybody had trimmed those in anyways on Morocco earlier. And that seemed to be the value. And then Croatia, Canada, and then this last game, I mean, a draw kind of suited Germany there. So they got that goal. I don't think they really cared after that. So, yeah, ready to go for tomorrow, though.
All right. Well, let's get into it, mate. Cameroon versus Serbia. So we're into the second round of games, or group games here for Group G and H, I believe. I thought Cameroon were pretty decent. They showed, especially in that first half, versus Switzerland, showed some promise on the counter attack. Just lacked a bit of, lacked someone decent finishing up top in that first half. In the second half, I think it was kind of what we talked about last week, was their lack of adaptability. They haven't got the greatest tactical coach at the helm. So when you're going up against someone like Switzerland who can switch things up, basically, they just weren't able to adapt in that second half and got done 1-0. And Serbia, I mean, weird game against Brazil because they kind of played against how they normally operate in terms of just, scoring goals. I guess it's a bit different when you're going against Brazil, but yeah, they were clearly outplayed. They clearly lost on XG too. But yeah, what do you think about this game? It's you would expect Serbia to go back to their winning, not to their winning, sorry, but like their attacking ways, you would assume. But yeah, maybe we can expect some goals. I'll just quickly read out the odds. You've got Cameroon 5.39, the draw 3.7, Serbia 1.75, and the handicap at 0.75, and over under at an even 2. Thoughts, mate?
The handicap odds are interesting. I think the most interesting is probably the goals, because it's there's been action on the overs into what you said, what you're quoting there at 1.9 for the 2.25 at Pinnacle, and the overs have gotten action because it's a game that both of these teams will probably be looking to win. in my opinion, that doesn't maybe influence the odds, I think, as much as the odds tend to drift sometimes due to those kind of things like, oh, this team needs to win, so they're going to win. That's not really how it works. Or these teams need to score, so they're going to score. So like on the handicap, I thought with that drift, I tend to like in the first half. I mean, I'm not gonna like. I highly recommend you guys play my props for a lot heavier than you play my regular game action. Like, if I was gonna play this, it'd be like small, like a quarter unit or something. But I kind of do in this early game again, like the first half draw at like 2.2, or you could play like first half Cameroon plus 0.25. I think it is. Get it up there. Yeah, first half Cameroon plus 0.25. I think that was last at 1.95 at Pinnacle. Either of those routes, I could see the first half ending in a draw, but then maybe somebody cracking it open in the second half. I can't be having the Serbians at 1.7. I mean,
I was
tend
going
to,
to say that. Yeah,
I'd,
I kind of
I'd,
think about it this way. I think Switzerland closed at like 1.85, 1.9, something like that against Cameroon last game, and I think Serbia are a worse team than Switzerland, maybe not by much. And Cameroon showed promise against Switzerland, and the odds are even shorter on Serbia. I don't understand the match odds at all.
Yeah, and especially when you get to thinking like it's not necessarily been the African teams in general, but the North African teams especially basically have home field advantage, which is something that I don't think was talked about. I didn't even factor it into my odds enough. I don't think people talked about it enough. I don't think people factored it into any odds enough, whatever they may be, even the game odds, that the North African teams would basically have 0.3s worth the regular home field advantage, like, a quarter to 0.3s worth of a goal, basically, for the North African teams. So, I mean, I wouldn't put Cameroon exactly in that category, but I did see a lot of Cameroonians at that last game. Certainly more than like these Eastern European teams have been providing in terms of fans. So that's something to look out for in these games. But for those reasons, though, I do tend to like I like the Cameroonian side a little bit more with the drift on the overs. I tend to like even the unders a little bit more. I don't know exactly the health of Vlahovic and Mitrovic, so that might be something to look out for that could influence the odds if one of them's out or if both of them are out. The unders could get some steam there if they're in, like maybe people are thinking overs. But yeah, I tend to like the first half draw if you're going to do it that way, or plus 0.25 Cameroon first half. But my actual play would be on the props. And the possessions line is a little bit weird here. It's set at 57% for Serbia, even though Cameroon had 49% possession against a Switzerland team who I think can dominate the flow of the game better than this Serbian team can. Like, you're looking at like Milinkovic Savic that's going to mainly do that for this Serbian team, but with that 5 at the back, I think Cameroon can get a foothold in this game with their midfield, and I'm taking Anguissa over 50 or over 46.5 passes at 1.83 at Bet365. I haven't looked around if you want to look at like Boyle Sports or Bet Victor, but that's better than any of the other books besides those two. So I like Anguissa over 46.5 passes. And then I'd ladder that over 54.5 passes at 4.33 and over 58.5 passes at 7 for smaller stakes on the ladder there. He got 60 against Switzerland. And like I said, I see this Cameroonian team getting a foothold in the game more in this Serbian game than they did in that game. And in that game, he had 60 passes, and the Cameroonians had 49% possession. The possession, I think we're getting the value on the passes because I think the possession line could be set a little high here. Most books have it at 56.5, can be in some of the offshores and things like that. I mean, I'd be a little bit lower, but I'm not going to take that line. I'm going to take the passes line. I think that's where the value is, and I like those alts, especially on Anguissa if he racks up the passes. So that'd be my play here, and I would tend to lean at anyone off Serbia if they're going to back them.
Yeah, no, I'm very much the same. I was thinking the over, but the over 2.25, but I also thought, yeah, I could see a case where it could be 0-0 at halftime, or 0-0 for a long part of the game, and someone scores a goal and then they shut up shop kind of thing. And yeah,
And if
Serbia held out Brazil for a long time. So.
Yeah, and if it was like 0-0 halftime, like you're saying, I wouldn't advise against like that overs drip at halftime live if you're going to do something like that, or like, if it's in the 40th minute and it's 0-0, maybe if you want to get in a second before halftime or a second after halftime, whatever. But if you want to do a live overs drip, I wouldn't necessarily put anybody off that, because the Cameroonians' legs can go, like you say. Tactically, the coach maybe puts something out there that you're not expecting, B, and then C, both of these teams really would be looking to win this game. So that's why I tend to stick to the first half when I'm back in. If I was going to back those handicaps or over unders that I mentioned, that's why I'd tend to stick to the first half, for the same reasons you're saying that the over could end
Yeah.
up being something to look at for the full game or in the second half.
Yeah. All right, good stuff, mate. For me personally, I'll be having a bet on Cameroon. I know they're at 5.39, 5. I'll just have a little bit on them. You should be able to get probably a bit bigger on the exchanges, or maybe there's some soft bookies out there that are hanging some bigger prices. But yeah, I think Serbia are much too short. I thought they would be closer to the evens kind of mark, something like that. So I'm happy to have a small play on Cameroon there if you want to take any of my advice on this podcast. All right, mate, let's move on to South Korea versus Ghana. Interesting odds here. South Korea at 2.58, the draw at 3.13, Ghana at 3.15, Asian handicap just at the draw no bet, zero number there, and then over under 2.0. Are you surprised by these odds at all? I mean, people were largely impressed with how South Korea performed against Uruguay. I know Ghana put a couple past Portugal, but and I guess they were very unlucky with the penalty with Ronaldo too to get things kicked off. But yeah, how do you see this game playing out? I thought South Korea may be a little bit shorter, but it's funny because I feel like a lot of these games, like especially like Tunisia, I feel like the market just overreacted hugely to their performance, and then you had some other cases I'm trying to think of where the odds have essentially been for match day 2 pretty even, and then one team's performed well and the other hasn't. And then the odds have been, like really heavily moved in one way. So I thought that would happen in this game, and potentially we see South Korea closer to evens, maybe. But yeah, any thoughts on this one, mate?
I'd be closer to the market than evens on South Korea there. I mean, I really don't know. I don't know how to split this one on the handicap, to be honest. The odds have been pretty static since open. They basically open the same as what they are right now at all the books that'll take a bet. So it's not really one that I would tend to get involved in. The Ghanaians probably have some of the athleticism, I'd say, as I pointed out in that Portuguese game, which they athletically went toe-to-toe with that Portugal team for a lot of the game. And like you said, were maybe unlucky with some, and maybe could have even scored another goal in that game earlier. So it was interesting, that game. And the South Koreans, though, were just so stout at the back, and they will have the discipline. And it's so hard for me to split these teams, and they're so contrasting styles, I feel like. So basically what I'm going for here is I'm going for into the shots market first. These bets I'm going to give you, though, one of them's on the shots markets and one of them's on the tackles markets for both teams combined. Both of these bets have over 4 or they're unders, and the overs is hitting at 40% rate for both of these bets on both sides in the last 14 all competitions. So I really like the stats on these bets. But the first one is under 20 and a half shots combined at Bet365 in the South Korea Ghana game. And I'd ladder that down for 18 and a half and 14 and a half unders as well at 2.75 and 8 right now at 365. So like I said, I just see this being more of a stalwart game where like the South Koreans might sit a little bit. If the Ghanaians dispossess, they might make a run, but then might pull it back. I see a lot of this game being played in the midfield more than in the backs of either halves. And I don't see runs making it past the back lines of either team a ton. The South Koreans probably more for some of their lack of nous up front and lack of natural ability, I'd say, at some of the wings, even though they do have Son, like some of those other wing backs and things like in the attacking ranks. And then in the Ghanaian side, they probably don't have the fluidity, I'd say, to put together moves to break down that back four of South Korea. I love the way Muhammad Kudus played in that first game, but like Samed didn't do it for me. And they just, for me, they didn't string together enough of the possession that I probably thought they would have against Portugal. And that's one reason my team total Ghana tackles bet missed by just like 2 tackles, I think. So I think that this game's going to be kind of a stalwart, and for those reasons, I like the under shots. When you look at the comps on these teams for who they've played that is similarly rated to Ghana and South Korea, the plays are even hitting higher than that 60% rate that I mentioned too on the unders hit rates on both of these plays for both teams in the last 14 competitions. So I really like that. And in Ghana versus Portugal, there were only 30 total tackles. I had that game scheduled for about 35. But there were only 30 total tackles. And the South Koreans aren't near the protagonists that the Portuguese are for the tackles. So I really would see this game going also under the tackles, under 28.5 tackles at 1.9 at Bet365. Also, Bovada has that price at 1.9, under 28.5 combined tackles, and under 24.5 combined tackles as well, and under 20.5 laddered at 8.5. So you can get the under 24.5 at 4.33 and the under 20.5 at 8.5. I would take those for small bets as well. So I just see this kind of being a stalwart match where both teams struggle to break each other down. And for those reasons, I like the under shots and under tackles.
Interesting. I would have thought, a very important game for both of these sides. Like pretty much. I mean, a draw probably doesn't do too much for them. Maybe they'd be happy to take it, but if they want to go through, they're going to have to get a win at some point. So, yeah, I would have thought that maybe they'd go at it a little bit more. But do you think, like, naturally these teams are quite conservative anyway?
Yeah, I don't know, like, if it's as narrative based, this one, as it is stats based. But if you take a look at the cards line, you're going to see over 3.5 and over 4. Those kind of games that you're talking about where teams are desperate and they have to get a result, especially if it sticks closer into later in the match, you're going to see more cards in those type of games usually. And although foul and card situations can be the same situations as tackles, players on fouls and cards are less prone to tackle because they're more likely to get a second card or get that yellow card. So that might be another narrative-based angle that could help the unders here if you get a couple cards in this game due to that desperation. But a lot of the African teams can tend to lose their head and would tend to get more cards just in a stats-based scenario. Yeah, I don't know if it's as narrative-based though as it is just the stats. I would see it going unders in both of those aspects.
Yeah, and also the Portugal-Uruguay game isn't played till after. So it's not like, let's just say Uruguay go out and beat Portugal, then both of these teams, like one of them probably needs a win to get themselves up into that, foray between those teams. But if Portugal wins and then you've got the game after, then they can kind of take a draw and it doesn't affect them all too much. Yeah, great point here from John Nimmo. He says, remember to consider qualifying requirements for the rest of the group games. I think it's a really important thing to take into account, especially especially for this next game, which we can move on to now, because I think this is a reasonably strong play considering what's at stake for these two teams. And thanks, John, for the compliment there. Brazil versus Switzerland. Brazil at 1.47. Switzerland at 7.91. These odds they've updated a little bit since I put them in before. And the draw is at 4.54. Asian handicap at 1.25. And the over-under is at 2.5. I've already had a bet here, and that's under 2.5 goals. And my thinking behind this was Switzerland, they are pretty tactically adaptable, and I know they played reasonably offensively against Cameroon. I just think they'll set up completely different here against Brazil and be a lot more defensive. And I'm not going to sit here and say they're going to sit back the whole time against someone like Brazil, but they don't they're not going to go out there and attack Brazil, I wouldn't think, and try and get the win, or really take it to Brazil in that way. Switzerland have already got 3 points from this group, that 3 points from their previous match, and they don't have that incentive to go out there and get the win. I can just see them being more than happy to play out for a draw here. Or, worst case scenario, even if they go down, 1-0 against Brazil, I don't really see them, going all out to go and get that draw. And they're overall, they're a good team. I think they're better than Serbia. I think they can put up a better fight than Serbia did. Also take into account that Neymar's out, most likely. And, Brazil probably won't have the same presence in attack. So, yeah, I really like the under 2.5 here. Even Brazil, they've got, who would they have after this game? Cameroon. So you would think they'd be pretty confident they can get 3 points from that game. So I don't think they're going to be, hugely, balls to the wall, if you want to say, to go and get goals out there. And we just saw in their last game that, 2-0 under 2.5 landed also. So, yeah, I think you can get, just trying to look at the odds here quickly. I've already bet it yesterday, but yeah, 2.02 under 2.5 goals for on Pinnacle there for that game, for this game, sorry. But yeah, do you have any thoughts? Or maybe people want to wait until they see what happens in the Cameroon-Serbia game first?
No, I mean, I don't have a ton of thoughts on the game odds, but I tend to be in line with you. I might be geared more towards another first half angle, just in case the Brazilians run riot like they can. If you're gonna sit in, not sit. I mean, Switzerland are gonna have less of the ball, but Brazil are so direct, that they're gonna get the ball too. Switzerland. But I just think if you're gonna play that low block against Brazil for that long, at some point you almost know what's coming. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're just so good. They can break it down so well. With the guys they have so many guys can make that one decisive pass in their front line. So, I maybe I would be geared towards more first half unders, under 1 or something in the first half. But yeah, I don't mind the unders angle there. I'm gonna play it a little bit differently though. Like I said, I got a player prop for this game, and I also have a game prop. For the game prop, I'm gonna go back to the well. If you listen to the last podcast where we had Brazil on the next day, I took the over game tackles at 31.5 against Serbia, and the whole ladder hit. And I'm also going to take it here. The difference is you're going to have it's over 32.5 at 1.9 instead of over 31.5 at 1.9 at Bovada and 365, and you're probably getting one more tackle, I'd say, just because Switzerland averaged just a touch more tackles than Serbia. But I thought that other line was off, and I think this line is off too. Brazilian games just they breed tackles, and they've got such. You don't have Neymar in this one, which is a minus. slightly tactically, but like when you're bringing in like someone like Paqueta or another Brazilian who's also going to dangle their dribble out there and who's also going to try to run past the defense, and they're, like I said, they're so direct with their attack. It's much less of it's a 1-2 attack, but once they latch onto the ball, they're much more willing to run past somebody than a lot of these teams are. So I just love the tackles here again. And like I said, you got Rafinha, Richie, and Vinny probably running at those back lines. They had 29 against Tunisia in a friendly recently, 46 against Ghana in a friendly recently, and in their 10 of their last 13 competitive competitions, have hit this overs line. So it's just an incredible hit rate at this line for the Brazilian team. And in the Copa America, they only missed the line once. So in a tournament setting, they're just they breed tackles in competitive games. So if the Swiss, like we said, are going to keep this competitive for a long time, I really do think that the tackles line is way too short here once again. So I would also ladder those up to over 35.5 tackles at 3, over 38.5 at 5, and over 41.5 at 8.5 for smaller stakes than your main line there. And really like the tackles in this game, especially if the Swiss keep it close, like we said. And on the same angle, I got a player prop for the tackles, and it's going to be Sylvain Widmer, the Swiss right back. Out there, he'll likely get Vinicius, who again, like all the Brazilian players, tends to breed the tackles. Heat maps are great down the deep corners for the tackles in Brazil games. So for the opposing wingbacks or right and left backs you're looking at there. So Widmer, you're expecting to play right back. He got a few tackles in the last game, I think 3 or 4. So against Vinicius, I expect him to rack a few again. You can get over 1.5 tackles at 1.67 at 3.65 and the offshore lines. And you can also get 5+ and 6+ at Ladbrokes at Coral for smaller stakes if you want to ladder it at 9 and 18 for 5 and 6+ tackles for Sylvain Widmer out there, the Swiss right back. So it's all the tackles here in this game for me.
Yeah, good call, mate. I like that very much. We had a comment actually from Dave Winder. He says Samba football does not allow for such pragmatism, and I definitely agree with that. I guess it's more so just thinking about it numbers wise. I feel like a 0-0, 1-0, 2-0 Brazil, 1-1, those kind of score lines, I would say it lands over 50% of the time in this fixture, and compared to a 2-1, a 3-0, that kind of scoreline for Brazil. Or, I mean, you never know, the Swiss could come out and score a couple goals too. But I think maybe people are thinking that I just think the Swiss are a great team. They're so adaptable with their tactics. Just interesting that Brazil have essentially got the exact same match odds here as they did against Serbia. And I would say Switzerland are a much, maybe not a much tougher matchup, but they're definitely a tougher matchup for me. So
I definitely think they can hold in that back line better than like the Serbians can, for instance. Yeah. And just one thing I forgot to mention on those tackles plays too. Shaqiri and Embolo can definitely get down those wings to also cause the Brazilians to make some tackles. So, and those Brazilian front players always get tackles anyways, usually because they're kind of feisty. So I really like the tackles both ways anyways, just as another point on that. But I agree with you. I would tend to see a low-scoring Brazil win.
Yeah. All right. Good stuff, mate. Let's move on to the final game tomorrow, which is Portugal versus Uruguay. Big game here in Group H. Both teams will probably be maybe slightly disappointed with their first round performances, especially Uruguay, who are very much a big onus here to get points, especially if earlier in the day that there is a winning result for either South Korea or Ghana. Do you think potentially Portugal may sit back a little bit here? Not be like too willing to take the game to the Uruguayans, or do you think that it could be a fun game?
I tend to think both actually, so, which is kind of odd. You wouldn't normally think that, but yeah, I do like the Portuguese. To me, like under Santos, they're not a very proactive team. I'd put it like that. They're more of a reactive team. So yeah, the Ghanaian team kind of try to take it to them, and it was a good physical battle in the midfield, I thought, but yeah, the Portuguese just had too much nous up front and more fluidity, I'd say, through their phases of the game. But I think the Uruguayans may pose a problem here for that Portuguese backline, because you see Pepe coming in tomorrow likely. Um, if not Carvalho deputizing as the center back because Danilo Pereira is out, who was the center back who had been deputizing because he's really a defensive midfielder, but he had been
Yeah.
deputizing back there. So
Is
maybe
he
you see.
injured?
Yeah, I did think I saw him injured and out for this game. So you seen maybe Ruben Neves, maybe Pep. I've heard Pepe by reports will be the center back, but
Surely.
maybe Carvalho though, maybe Neves. You really don't know. It's more of a lineup check, but any of them, I guess people were thinking kind of what you're thinking with the Portuguese. Oh, they can sit back and just kind of let the Uruguayans take the game to them and just play defensive the whole game, but are they good enough to do that? Are they good enough to stop
Well,
Uruguay if they just let them have it? And I don't see that they don't keep a ton of clean sheets. I was kind of surprised to see the over odds drifting to where they had drifted to, where like 2.25 is evens right now.
but would you
I
rather
just
sit back a little bit deeper, or would you rather risk it a little bit more, play with a bit of a higher line, and then you have a situation where we could be talking about Darwin Nunez versus Pepe in a sprint? And, I don't know how fast Pepe is, but the man's 40 years old.
yeah, if they sit back in a block though, I just don't see them keeping a clean sheet. I don't see them keeping a clean sheet either way, to be honest.
Okay.
But that's just my personal opinion. Like I said, I'm not going to bet any of these handicaps. Like I said, I don't have any bet in this game really. It's more of a lineup check for me. Like
Yeah.
according to one of those CB center backs, but the odds have been kind of static on the money line, a little bit on money for the unders here recently, but there's just not much in it for me, I don't think. But if I was going to be on anything, I'd be on the overs. Portugal only two of Portugal's last 10 games have gone under 2, and both of those games had more than 2 goals in XG. So that was the stat I was looking at to back what I kind of thought with what I kind of thought based on the odds. But yeah, it's just not one for me to bet.
Yeah, I'm finding it very hard to break down. I think my biggest advice I'd give to people is play it based on what happens in the South Korea game, the South Korea Ghana game. Because if South Korea, especially, go out there and get a win, then you're looking at them being on 4 points, Uruguay being on 1. So a draw for them against Portugal is like, it puts them at 2 points, South Korea at 4, and then you go into the last game, South Korea playing Portugal. Portugal would essentially, be like a draw would probably get them through. So for South Korea too, I guess. So yeah, I think if South Korea, even if Ghana win too, you're looking at a case where Uruguay probably have to go out there and take it to Portugal a little bit and try and get a win, which could end up with goals. So, and then maybe that line would jump up a little bit. So yeah, like you said, mate, I don't really have too much to add on this one. Maybe it's just one to wait and see. Do you think to see how it goes in the South Korea game?
Yeah, I would say that, and also just like on both of these, when like maybe it's a live job too. Like if it's live, you might see like the Portuguese sitting deep early and like nothing happening because of what you're saying in those other games. But then, like, if the Uruguayans have to have a goal based on those early results, and you still haven't seen a goal in the game, and it's 0-0, say at halftime, then second half might be more of a time that I'd be more keen to get involved personally. That's just me.
Yeah.
But
yeah, for sure.
I
It's a shame that he doesn't play more attacking. Santos doesn't set them up more attacking, because Portugal, like, when you know, you saw it the other day. They were once it was 1-1 and they let the shackles go. They've got some incredible talent up front. Silva, Felix, Ronaldo, Leao, like seriously. I mean,
And that's why you could see the goals raining in, like if there's one. Like if one goal
yeah,
comes in, maybe you see a ton, but yeah, like I said, it's not one where there's a huge pre-match edge there for me, so it's really not something for me. I did see a comment earlier though that I thought was interesting. This Marinak said he was happy that Croatia stuck it to the disrespectful Canadian coach. I
Marinko.
saw that. I saw those comments where that those pretty interesting comments and fueling that Croatian fire. So that was a really interesting press conference. I thought after that, yeah, coach might have been a little emotional there, but
yeah, it's just I always find it weird when coaches or anyone really just stokes a fire for no point, really, and it's. I mean, unless maybe the opposition you can tell is like a can be overly emotional at times, and it goes against them. I mean, it just never really makes sense to me. It just gives more fuel to the fire for
especially when just like your point, especially when you have such a young team and like those Croatians are so seasoned, they're just gonna eat that stuff up and take you out for a dog walk like they did today.
Yeah, no, definitely, mate. All right, well, let's call that for Portugal and Uruguay. I think, yeah, like we said, either watch the game or see what happens in that earlier group game with South Korea and Ghana, mate. But yeah, your best bet for tomorrow. I can go first, actually. Why not? I'll go first for once. Do I go with yeah, we'll go with under 2.5 in the Brazil Switzerland game. You can get that at 2.02. So above evens. I think under 2.5 goals is more likely overall than it being over 2.5 goals. What about yourself, mate?
Yeah, I like all those other bets that I mentioned tomorrow in the South Korea Ghana and the Cameroon Serbia game pretty well too. But my best bet is once again going to be the Brazil tackles ladder for the game. So that's Bet365, Bovada, widely available offshore total tackles over 32.5 in the Brazil Switzerland game at 1.9. Ladder that up to 41.5 at 8.5.
Lovely, mate. We will be back tomorrow, same time as always. It will definitely be with myself and Paul again. We might have Tony Alvarez joining us, but that could just be a last minute kind of thing. But yeah, thanks everyone for tuning in once again. You can find Paul on Twitter at Feinting The Line. Make sure you check out his service, which I guess is also called Feinting The Line. See his incredible results throughout the World Cup. And yeah, make sure you subscribe to get all of his prop bets. Find myself, if you want to, at Alex Vella _. You can see me well and truly cheering home the Socceroos as they make their charge towards a maiden World Cup title that we can all see happening. I tweeted the other day,
Huge win.
It sucked that Saudi Arabia didn't get a result against who were they playing? It's all a blur. Can you remember who Saudi Arabia played? They lost 2-0 to someone.
It would have been Mexico or Poland, right?
Poland, yeah, Poland.
Yeah.
I tweeted after the Socceroos game that could you imagine seeing a Saudi Arabia versus Australia round of 16 game in the next round? It would just be insane. So
cracking contest, right?
Well, even if Australia get through and come second, they're going to end up playing maybe not even Argentina. So they could end up.
No, that was honestly a huge Aussie win for me because unlike you, I don't want them to go to the next round, but I still have that Denmark future to qualify, which I mean,
I do
like
too. I've got
crazy.
Denmark to qualify too.
Yeah, it's crazy how poor they've played, but it's just like now all they need is a win versus the Aussies, and it's like if we lose it on that one, I won't be able to bear it. But yeah, that'll be fun, that last game of the group. So
I mean, yeah, surely Denmark can get over Australia in this last game. I'm
You
just
would
trying to
think
find the
they
odds now.
have played the worst football they've played in years.
Yeah.
In these past couple games, and
Yeah.
I watch a lot of international football, especially the European teams, and they just played the worst football they played in years. They have to scrap that 3-back. It is dread. They have it's dread. They need to go back to the 4-3-3. So
Yeah, I'm seeing now that Denmark are 1.5 to beat Australia, which
is the same odds we took the future at.
I know. I mean, yeah, Australia exerted a lot of energy against Tunisia, but I mean, for the large part, they look pretty decent. I mean, their press was great. Denmark are in terrible form. Like, I would not steer anyone away from the draw there. But anyway, we'll talk about that in a couple of days. I'm probably sounding a little bit biased. I do think Denmark should be favourites, but 1.5, it's a pretty ugly price to take on a team that's been pretty dreadful this tournament. But mate,
Agreed.
thanks for coming along once again. We'll be back tomorrow. And thanks everyone for listening. Please make sure you do a quick rate and review of the podcast if you have time, and subscribe to us wherever you are watching or listening. And as always, if you are looking to implement some of the strategies we talked about today on the podcast, please make sure that you start a free week trial of Trademate Sports and start your value betting journey. Cheers once again, mate, and I'll catch you tomorrow.
All right, see you then.